Ambassador Lee Hana felt her heart pounding as she walked into the massive hall of Station Nexus. The place was huge, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever, made of some kind of crystal that caught and reflected light in ways that hurt her eyes. Around her, dozens of alien beings sat in their special seats, each one designed for their particular body type. Some floated in tanks of liquid, others perched on metal branches, and a few seemed to be made of living rock. The noise was overwhelming. Every species was talking at once, their voices mixing together through the translation devices into a mess. Full of angry sounds. Hana knew they were all talking about the same thing, humanity. And none of it was good. She had been Earth's ambassador for only 3 years, but it felt like a lifetime. When humans first made contact with the Galactic Council, everyone back home had been so excited. Finally, they weren't alone in the universe. There were friends out there, waiting to welcome them into a bigger community. How wrong they had been. The tall, blue-scaled Altarian stood up first. Its voice boomed through the chamber, making Hana's bones vibrate. "Look at their history," it said, gesturing toward the massive screen that showed images from Earth. War after war. They fought each other for thousands of years. They created weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They polluted their own home until it was almost dead. The images on the screen changed, showing old footage from Earth's darker moments. World wars, nuclear explosions, destroyed cities, dying animals. Hana wanted to look away, but she forced herself to watch. Yes, humanity had done terrible things, but they had also done beautiful things, and that footage never seemed to make it into these presentations. A creature that looked like it was made of living glass spoke next. This was the Viridian ambassador, and its body pulsed with red light when it was angry. They cannot control themselves. Even now, in their short time among us, they have caused problems. The incident at Kepler 442 proves they are too dangerous. Hana's stomach twisted. The Kepler 442 incident had been a nightmare, but not for the reasons the Council thought. A human research team had been working alongside alien scientists at a remote station. There had been a misunderstanding about safety protocols. Humans touching something they shouldn't have, not knowing it was sacred to another species. The resulting explosion had killed 17 beings, including 5 humans. It was an accident, but the Council refused to see it that way. To them, it was proof that humans were reckless and violent. "Honored Council members," Hana said, stepping forward into the center of the chamber. Her voice echoed strangely in the vast space. "I understand your concerns about my people. We have made mistakes, terrible ones, but we have also learned from them. The humans you see today are not the same as those from our violent past." She paused, looking around at the alien faces. Some wouldn't even look at her. Others stared with what she could only assume was disgust. "We offer something unique," she continued. "Our history of conflict has taught us how to solve problems, how to adapt, how to survive when everything seems hopeless. We can bring new ideas, new ways of thinking." The Altarian made a sound that the translator rendered as bitter laughter. "New ways of thinking? You mean new ways of destroying?" "The research station explosion was an accident," Hana said, her voice getting stronger. "My people died there too. We mourn all the lives lost. But one accident cannot define an entire species." But she could see in their faces that it was already too late. The decision had been made before she even walked into the chamber. This trial was just for show. The voting began. One by one, each of the 12 founding species of the Council announced their decision. The Etherians, who looked like floating jellyfish made of light, voted for banishment. The rock-like Titans voted for banishment. The plant-based Verdians voted for banishment. 12 votes, 12 species deciding the fate of all humanity. And every single vote was the same. As the final vote was cast, massive screens around the chamber lit up with official documents. Humanity was officially banned from all Council space. All trade agreements were cancelled. All diplomatic relationships were ended. Humans were forbidden from entering any Council system or using any Council space lanes. But the worst part was yet to come. The quarantine protocol was activated immediately. Hana watched through the station's massive windows as huge machines moved into position around Earth's solar system. These weren't just barriers, they were prison walls made of pure energy, designed to keep humanity locked away from the rest of the galaxy forever. Her shuttle ride back to Earth was the longest journey of her life. As they approached the edge of the solar system, she could see the barriers forming. Streams of crackling energy that connected massive stations, creating an unbreakable wall around their home. The pilot tried to comfort her, saying it was temporary, that the Council would change their minds eventually. But Hannah knew better. She had seen the fear in their alien eyes, the absolute certainty in their voices. As far as the Galactic Council was concerned, humanity was a disease that needed to be contained. They had been tried, judged, and sentenced. Earth was now a prison, and every human was serving a life sentence for crimes their species had committed, long before they ever knew aliens existed. As her ship passed through the barrier for the last time, Hannah wondered if she would ever see the stars again. The elevator descended deep into Luna's core, carrying Park Min-ho and his group of visitors through layers of rock and metal that had been carved out over decades of desperate work. The walls around them pulsed with soft blue light from power conduits that fed the massive underground city below. Min-ho watched the faces of the newcomers as they pressed against the elevator's windows, their eyes growing wide as the true scale of what humanity had built became clear. "Most people think we just gave up when the barriers went up," Min-ho said, his voice calm despite the incredible journey they were taking. "They imagine us sitting around feeling sorry for ourselves, waiting for the aliens to change their minds and let us back into their club." The elevator stopped with a soft chime, and the doors opened to reveal something that looked like it belonged in a dream. The Lunar City main cavern stretched out before them, so vast that its far walls disappeared into a soft haze. Buildings rose up from the cavern floor in spirals and curves, connected by bridges that seemed to float in mid-air. Gardens cascaded, down from every level, filled with plants that had never existed on Earth, new species created by human scientists who had learned to play with genetics in ways the old world never imagined. 27 years ago, Lunar Colony was just a mining outpost with maybe 3,000 people, Min-ho continued as they walked along one of the main pathways. Now look at it. 2 million people call this place home, and every single one of them is here because they chose to build something instead of just surviving. The group stopped at an observation deck that overlooked one of the quantum forges. The machine was beautiful in its complexity, with rings of energy spinning around a central core, where raw materials were being transformed into things that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Kim Soo-jin joined them at the railing, her lab coat still dusted with the silver powder that came from working with quantum materials. "The Council's technology was good," she said, watching as the forge created what looked like a solid piece of starlight. "But it was designed by committee. Every innovation had to be approved by 12 different species, each with their own ideas about how things should work. It made everything stable, but it also made everything slow." She pointed to the various machines working around the forge. "When we got cut off, we had to reverse engineer everything from the few pieces of alien tech we had. But here's the thing, we didn't just copy it. We improved it. We made it faster, smaller, more efficient. We made it do things the original designers never thought of." The tour continued through levels of the city that seemed to go on forever. Hydroponic farms that fed millions of people using techniques that could grow food in spaces the size of closets. Recycling centers that could break down any material and rebuild it into something completely different. Schools where children learned subjects that didn't exist before the barriers went up, like quantum biology and dimensional mathematics. But the most impressive sight was the shipyards. Through reinforced windows that looked out into the airless void around Luna, they could see the construction bays, where humanity's new fleet was taking shape. These weren't the sleek, elegant ships that the Council species used. Human ships looked different, more angular, more aggressive, built for adaptation rather than ceremony. "Every ship is unique," Min-ho explained as they watched workers in spacesuits guide massive hull sections into place. "We don't have the luxury of mass production like the Council does. Every vessel has to be perfect for its specific mission." From Luna, in the dark spaces between stars where no one was supposed to be looking, Captain Yoon Jae-hyun read through reports that officially didn't exist. His ship, the Shadow Runner, was one of dozens of stealth vessels that humanity had built, in secret, designed to slip through space without being detected by Council sensors. The reports he was reading painted a picture that would have shocked the aliens who had locked humanity away. The Galactic Council was falling apart. The hegemony wars had started as a small disagreement between two Council species over mining rights, but they had spiraled into something much worse. Entire star systems were being destroyed. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years were now battlefields. 3 sectors of Council space had already fallen to chaos. Species that had seemed untouchable were begging for help from neighbors who were too busy fighting their own wars to care. The perfect order that the Council had maintained for millennia was crumbling, and they had no idea how to fix it. But the most interesting part of Jae-hyun's reports wasn't about the Council's problems. It was about humanity's successes. Before the barriers went up, humans had established colonies in 17 different star systems. The Council had assumed these colonies would die without support from Earth. They had been wrong. Not only had the human colonies survived, they had thrived. Cut off from both Earth and the Council, they had been forced to become completely self-sufficient. They had made contact with species that weren't part of the Council, rebels, outcasts, and independent traders, who moved through the spaces between official territories. These human colonies had become something new. They weren't trying to recreate Earth in distant star systems. Instead, they were building societies that combined the best of human innovation with ideas borrowed from dozens of alien cultures. They were creating art that had never existed before, solving problems in ways that surprised even themselves, and most importantly, they were making friends. The Council had tried to isolate humanity, to cut them off from galactic civilization, but in doing so, they had accidentally created something they never expected. A network of independent human communities that were free to think and act without anyone's permission. And these communities were starting to work together in ways that made Captain Jae-hyun smile as he read his reports. Humanity hadn't just survived their isolation. They had used it to become something better than what they were before. Captain Oh Ji-won pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation window, watching as another strange ship approached Haven Station. This one looked like it had been built from scrap metal and pure determination, which, knowing the drifter fleets, was probably exactly what had happened. The ship's hull was covered in patches of different materials, each one telling a story of repairs made in the middle of nowhere with whatever parts they could find. Haven Station itself was a marvel that shouldn't have existed. Built in the empty space between Council territory and the unknown regions, it was officially nowhere. No government claimed the space it occupied, no laws applied to what happened inside its walls, and no official records acknowledged that it existed at all. It was perfect for people who didn't officially exist either. "Look at that beauty," Commander Nam Junho said, joining Ji-won at the viewport. He was pointing at a ship that seemed to be made entirely of living crystal, its surface shifting colors as it moved through space. Ethereal design, but see those modifications? Those are human improvements to their life support systems. The two of them had been stationed at Haven for almost 3 years now, long enough to see it grow from a small trading post into something that was becoming a real threat to the established order of the galaxy. Not through violence or conquest, but through something much more dangerous: cooperation. The main docking bay was always busy, but today it was packed. Ships from dozens of species were lined up waiting for berths, their crews eager to trade goods, information, and ideas. Ji-won could see Korthak miners unloading rare metals from their deep space operations, while a group of cybernetic augmented were examining human-built computer systems that could interface directly with their mechanical parts. The Council always said that different species couldn't really work together, Nam said, watching as a human engineer helped a group of insect-like hive workers repair their ship's engines. They claimed that's why they needed to be in charge, to keep everyone organized and peaceful. Ji-won laughed. Peaceful? Have they looked at their own territory lately? The trading halls of Haven were unlike anything that existed in Council space. Instead of the formal, regulated markets where every transaction had to be approved and recorded, Haven's halls were alive with the kind of chaotic energy that came from people who were free to make their own deals. Human traders sat across from beings that looked like walking trees, negotiating prices for rare seeds that could grow in the vacuum of space. Cybernetic merchants showed off their latest modifications to interested customers who paid with everything from precious metals to works of art. In one corner of the hall, engineer Cho Minseo was demonstrating a piece of equipment that had drawn a crowd of Korthak miners. The Korthak were known throughout the galaxy for their mining expertise, but they had a problem. Their equipment was designed to work in specific conditions and couldn't adapt when those conditions changed. "Your drills are excellent," Minseo was saying to the group of aliens, their rocky skin making them look like living mountains. "But what happens when you hit a pocket of liquid methane, or when the rock turns out to be harder than expected?" One of the Korthak made a grinding noise that the translator rendered as frustrated agreement. "Equipment fails. We lose time, money, sometimes workers." Minseo smiled and activated the human-modified drill he had brought for the demonstration. "Watch this," he said, setting it to work on a sample of rock that had been specially prepared with different layers and unexpected obstacles. The drill started normally, but as it encountered each new challenge, it adapted. When it hit liquid, it sealed itself and switched to a different drilling method. When the rock got harder, it changed its approach entirely. "How?" asked another. "Korthak," their voice full of wonder. "Human engineering philosophy," Minseo explained. "We don't build things to work perfectly in perfect conditions. We build things to work okay in terrible conditions. Our machines learn and adapt because we expect them to face problems we haven't thought of yet." The demonstration was interrupted by an urgent message on Ji-won's communicator. She was needed in the secure conference room immediately. The secure conference room at Haven was probably the most secret place in the galaxy, a room that was shielded from every known form of surveillance, where conversations could take place that would never be officially recorded or acknowledged. When Ji-won arrived, she found Nam already there, along with Dr. Lee Seonji, Haven's chief intelligence officer. The room's main screen was displaying something that made Ji-won's eyes widen in surprise. 3 different messages, Seonji said without preamble, all received through different intermediaries, all asking for the same thing. The messages were from council species, not rebels or outcasts, but actual members of the governing body that had banished humanity from civilized space. The Altarians, who had been among the loudest voices calling for human banishment, were asking for help with their failing life support systems. The Viridians needed assistance with a plague that was destroying their crystal cities. Most shocking of all, the Etherians were requesting human military advisors to help them deal with rebel uprisings in their territory. "They can't ask for help officially," Nam said, reading through the messages. "If the other council members found out they were talking to us, it would be a scandal, but they're desperate enough to risk it." Ji-won thought about what this meant. For 27 years, the council had maintained that humanity was too dangerous and unpredictable to be part of galactic civilization. They had locked humans away behind energy barriers and forbidden any contact. But now, when their perfect system was falling apart, they were secretly begging the barbaric humans for help. "What do we tell them?" she asked. Seonji smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. "We tell them that we're not the same humans they banished 27 years ago. We've learned a lot since then, mostly from the species they rejected and ignored. If they want our help, they're going to have to accept that we come as a package deal with all our new friends." Outside the conference room, Haven Station continued its work of bringing together the galaxy's outcasts and turning them into something stronger than any of them could be alone. Ships came and went, carrying goods and ideas to places the Council didn't even know existed. Trade routes were being established that bypassed Council space entirely. Alliances were being formed between species that had never met before humans introduced them. The Council had tried to isolate humanity, to cut them off from galactic civilization. Instead, they had accidentally created something that was becoming more powerful than the official government itself. A network of cooperation and mutual support that included everyone the Council had dismissed as unworthy. And now, as their perfect system crumbled around them, The council was starting to realize that maybe they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Kang Woo-jin had been staring at the same tactical display for 6 hours straight, watching red dots spread across the galaxy like a disease. Each red dot represented a harvester swarm, massive collections of mechanical ships that consumed everything in their path, turning planets into raw materials and entire star systems into fuel for their endless expansion. The command center around him buzzed with quiet activity. Officers moved between workstations, updating star charts and tracking the movement of fleets that officially didn't exist. The walls were lined with screens showing feeds from monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy, giving Earth's leadership a view of the chaos that the Council had tried so hard to hide. "Sir, another system has gone dark," reported Lieutenant Park Jaemin from his position at the communications array. "The Kepler sector is completely silent now. That's the 5th sector we've lost contact with in the past week." Wu Jin nodded grimly. The harvesters had appeared at the edge of the galaxy 6 months ago, emerging from the empty space between galaxies like a nightmare made real. At first, the Council had dismissed them as a minor threat, just another group of raiders that could be dealt with through their usual methods of diplomatic pressure and economic sanctions. They had been catastrophically wrong. The harvesters weren't interested in negotiation or tribute. They didn't want territory or resources in the traditional sense. They wanted everything, every ship, every planet, every living being, converted into components for their ever-growing swarm. They moved through space like a plague, leaving nothing but empty void behind them. "The Council fleets are getting destroyed," said Commander Cho Youngmin, looking up from his analysis station. "Their ships are beautiful, but they were designed for ceremony and intimidation. The harvesters don't care how impressive you look when they're tearing your hull apart." The irony was painful to watch. For thousands of years, the Council had maintained peace through a combination of superior technology and political pressure. Their ships were works of art, designed to inspire awe and demonstrate the advanced civilization that had created them. But when faced with an enemy that couldn't be negotiated with or impressed, those beautiful ships were proving to be death traps for their crews. A soft chime from the communications station made everyone in the command center look up. Communications officer Lim Haeun was staring at her screen with an expression of disbelief. "Sir," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "we're receiving an emergency transmission from Station Nexus. The Council is requesting immediate contact." With Earth's leadership, the command center fell silent. For 30 years, the Council had refused all contact with humanity. They had built barriers around Earth's solar system specifically to prevent any communication. Now, with their fleets burning and their worlds falling to the harvesters, they were breaking their own quarantine to ask for help. "Put them through," Wu Jin said. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar crystalline chambers of Station Nexus. But the station looked different now, damaged, with sections that had clearly been hastily repaired. The Council members, visible on the screen, looked desperate, their alien features showing stress in ways that Wu Jin had learned to recognize during his years of studying their species. The Altarian representative, the same one who had been so vocal about human banishment, decades ago spoke first. "Admiral Wu Jin, we need to discuss the current crisis." Wu Jin almost smiled. After 30 years of being told that humanity was too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species, the Council was calling him by his military rank and asking for a discussion. "I'm listening," he said simply. "The harvester threat is beyond our current capabilities to handle," the Altarian continued, the admission clearly painful. "We have lost 7 sectors and over 1 billion lives. Our projections suggest that without significant changes to our defensive strategies, we will lose the war." "And you want our help," Wu Jin said. It wasn't a question. Yes. The single word hung in the air between them. Wu Jin could see the other council members in the background, their body language showing the same desperate hope mixed with humiliation. "We're already helping," Wu Jin said, gesturing toward the tactical displays around him. "We've been tracking the harvester movements and analyzing their tactics. We've also been coordinating with our allies to prepare for the defense of threatened systems." "Your allies?" The Viridian ambassador's translucent form pulsed with confusion. "What allies?" Instead of answering directly, Wu Jin activated a new set of displays. The screens around the command center lit up with star charts, showing the true extent of humanity's network. Ships and stations that had been invisible to Council sensors were suddenly revealed, connected by trade routes and communication lines. That spanned half the galaxy. "We've had 30 years to make friends," Wu Jin said. "It turns out that there are a lot of species in the galaxy who were tired of being told they weren't good enough for the Council." The revelation was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the command center. The Harvesters had reached Sanctuary Prime, the Council's most important world after their home system. The planet's defenses were already failing. "Admiral Song Yunha is in position," reported Lieutenant Park. "The fleet is ready to decloak on your order." Wu Jin looked at the Council representatives on the screen. Their expressions showed they still didn't understand what was about to happen. "Fleet Admiral Song, you are authorized to engage," Wu Jin said. The space around Sanctuary Prime had looked empty to Council sensors. Their own fleet, what was left of it, was fighting desperately against Harvester swarms that outnumbered them 10 to 1. The planet below was already showing the scars of bombardment, its cities burning as mechanical invaders swept across its surface. Then the empty space came alive. Hundreds of ships suddenly appeared, their cloaking systems deactivating in perfect coordination. But these weren't just human ships. The fleet included vessels from dozens of species, Korthak mining barges converted into assault ships, drifter vessels that could move through space like ghosts, augmented craft that responded to their cyborg crew's thoughts at the speed of light. Fleet Admiral Song Yunha reporting, came the transmission that was broadcast to every remaining Council ship in the system. Human independent forces and allied species, ready to engage the Harvester threat. The battle that followed would be talked about for generations. Where the Council's beautiful, rigid ships had been systematically destroyed by the Harvester's adaptive tactics, the human-led alliance fought with a chaotic creativity that the mechanical invaders couldn't predict or counter. Ships worked together in ways that defied traditional military doctrine. Korthak miners used their industrial equipment to literally eat through Harvester hulls while human fighters provided cover. Drifter vessels appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at critical systems before vanishing again. The collective's hive-minded ships moved in perfect coordination, creating defensive patterns that protected the more vulnerable craft. But the most devastating weapon wasn't any single ship or technology. It was the way the Alliance fought as a single organism, each species contributing their unique strengths while covering for each other's weaknesses. The Harvesters, designed to counter the predictable tactics of individual species, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: true cooperation between radically different forms of life. As the last Harvester ship was destroyed and Sanctuary Prime was saved, Admiral Wu Jin looked at the Council representatives still on his screen. Their expressions had changed from desperation to something like awe. "How?" the Altarian asked quietly. "You taught us," Wu Jin replied. "When you banished us, you forced us to learn that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about finding others who need what you have to offer and offering them what they need in return." The galaxy's outcasts had just saved its most powerful civilization, and everything was about to change. The galaxy had completely changed. Where once stood the mighty Council chambers that only the most powerful species could enter, now stood something completely different. President Han Jisoo walked up the wide steps, looking out at an incredible sight that would have been impossible just months before. 60 different alien species filled the massive hall. Their representatives sat side by side, each with an equal voice in how the galaxy would be run. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had scales that shimmered in the light. A few breathed different gases and needed special equipment just to attend the meeting. Many of these species had never been allowed anywhere near the old council. The previous leaders had turned them away, calling them too primitive or too different to matter. Han stepped up to the speaking platform. Her voice carried across the hall as translation devices instantly converted her words into dozens of alien languages. The sound was like a symphony of different tones and frequencies as each species heard her message in their own way. "Today marks the end of the old ways," she announced. We are not just removing the energy barriers that trapped humanity in the Sol system for so long. We are tearing down something much more dangerous, the walls of fear and hatred that made Sol weaker. The crowd listened intently. Among them sat the survivors of the old council, the same beings who had once voted to lock humanity away from the rest of the galaxy. They looked very different now. Their fancy robes were gone, replaced by simple clothing. Many bore scars from the recent war against the Harvesters, the machine race that had nearly destroyed everything. After the ceremony ended, one of the former council members approached Han. It was an Altarian, a species known for their brilliant blue scales and proud nature. But this Altarian's scales were marked with deep scars from battle, and its usual arrogance was nowhere to be seen. "We made a terrible mistake about your people," the Altarian said quietly. "We thought strength meant conquering others and taking what you wanted. We were completely wrong. Your real strength was always in bringing different people together, in making enemies into friends." Han nodded respectfully. "We all learned hard lessons. The important thing is that we learned them together." The memorial gardens stretched out behind them, built on the exact spot where the old council chambers used to stand. Instead of cold marble and intimidating architecture, there were now flowering trees from dozens of worlds, fountains that sang in harmonious tones, and plenty of open space for everyone to enjoy. Children's laughter echoed through the gardens. Young ones from species that had been enemies for centuries now played games together, completely unaware of the old hatreds their parents had carried. General Shin Minwoo sat on a bench watching his daughter Park Yuna chase after a ball with her friends. The group included a young Viridian with green skin and extra arms that made him excellent at catching, a Korthak engineer's daughter whose mechanical implants helped her calculate the perfect throw, and several children from species so recently discovered that their names hadn't even existed in the old council's records. Minwoo smiled as he watched them play. Just a year ago, such a scene would have been impossible. The old council had made sure different species stayed separate, claiming it was for everyone's safety. They had said humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to roam freely among the civilized races of the galaxy. They had been partly right about humans being different. Humans did think differently than most other species. They formed bonds quickly with strangers. They took risks that seemed foolish to more cautious races. They refused to give up even when defeat seemed certain. These qualities had indeed made the old council nervous. But during the Harvester War, those same qualities had become humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. When the machines came to destroy all organic life, humans didn't just fight for themselves. They reached out to every species they could find, even their former enemies. They shared their strategies freely. They risked their lives to save people they had never met before. The Harvesters had expected to find a galaxy divided by fear and mistrust, easy to conquer piece by piece. Instead, they found something they couldn't understand or defeat, a united front of dozens of species working together, led by the very humans the Council had tried so hard to suppress. Now, as the children played in the memorial gardens and their parents worked together to build a better future, it was clear that the galaxy's greatest strength had always been its diversity. The old Council had tried to control that diversity, to rank some species as better than others, but true strength came from letting everyone contribute their unique gifts to the common good. The barriers were finally down, and the galaxy was stronger than it had ever been.